Hello guys, welcome back to another episode of the Fanboy Reviews Countdown. Today we take a look at the top 10 worst original Game Boy games. That's right, so these don't include the Game Boy Color or Game Boy Advance, just the original black and white games. Number 1. Star Wars Empire Strikes Back came out in '92. Ported from the NES version, Empire Strikes Back on Game Boy feels boring, bland, and empty most of the time. You play as Luke Skywalker throughout various tedious stages, but finding and using the Force powers is very time-consuming and confusing. The boss fights are monotonous, the stages are desolate. Otherwise, the faithful Star Wars music is the only decent thing about this game. Number 2. Tetris came out in 1989, one of the worst puzzle games ever. Tetris had terrible blocky graphics and uninteresting gameplay. Basically a ripoff of Alexei Pachinov's original puzzle game, Tetris was stolen by Nintendo and bundled with their new handheld system to make a quick buck. It had no replay value at all and was forgotten very quickly. Number 3. Bomberman GB came out in '94. Also known as Wario Blast featuring Bomberman, this was a very violent game about terrorism. That's right, terrorists blowing stuff up and killing other characters. I mean, typical Nintendo trying to exploit very violent depictions and brutal acts of atrocities in their games. The Wario version also puts the evil Mario clone against Bomberman in order to sell more copies. Number 4. Donkey Kong Land came out in '95. Basically a crappy ripoff of the Donkey Kong Country series on the SNES, this version featured enemies such as tunnel-digging moles, flying pigs, and underwater mollusks. Yep, it makes even less sense than the main console versions, and that's saying a lot. Even the graphics look worse and the music is not original. This game is also significantly easier with far less stages and bonus levels than DKC. Ugh. Number 5. Metroid 2 Return of Samus came out in '91. Easily the worst in the Metroid franchise. Return of Samus had repetitive graphics and exploration gets confusing and boring. Lackluster music that fails to create proper ambiance, no variety in the stages, and far too linear for a Metroid game. Return of Samus is another example of terrible sequels on handhelds that will never be as good as the console version. Number 6 is Kirby's Dream Land, came out in '92. A pathetically simplistic and easy game to beat, Kirby's Dream Land provided very basic gameplay and lackluster boss fights. The enemies included balloon cannons, twin block-pushing weirdos, and a fat penguin with a hammer. This means that the game is not even scary or dangerous. This was also Kirby's debut and first game, but it sucks so bad, it should have been his last and only game. Number 7. Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening came out in '93. Arguably the worst Zelda game in the franchise. This portable porta-potty awakening crap doesn't even feature the Triforce or Princess Zelda herself. The controls are cumbersome and annoying, while the graphics are so ugly and dull-looking, it's not even worth checking out. I mean, Zelda in black and white? How awful! It's just about as dumb as Link trying to escape an island. So it rips off Survivor. That's right. Survivor was a popular TV show, and Zelda ripped it off. Number 8. Super Mario Land came out in '89. An awful launch game for the Game Boy. This is one of the worst platformers ever. First of all, the graphics sucked so bad since there's no colors at all. So it's got very little detail. The gameplay tries too much to be like Mario Bros, except without the charm or the charisma of the original NES games. The music is also really bad and annoying. and it's just further proof that Mario sucked on the Game Boy. Number 9, Pokemon Blue and Red, came out in '96, originally in Japan anyway. Blue and Red were both gimmicky RPGs for the handheld that were essentially the same game. Yeah, the same game with minor differences. These two were so basic and easy to beat that even casual RPGs like Chrono Trigger looked really complex in comparison. Graphics are awful. Pokemon designs themselves didn't even have any animations during the battle, and most of the character designs are really terrible and uncreative. The list just goes on and on. Number 10 to round out this list, Wario Land Super Mario Land 3, came out in '94. This was Wario's first game, and it's a complete pile of absolute trash. Adventures far too much away from the traditional Mario Land gameplay, which were you got the Mario Bros. Style on the NES, but this one is just what? This one was about greed. It's slower paced. It's about collecting treasure for some weird reason. You basically play this helmet-wearing creepo who goes around trying to get rich. Basically, it sucked, and the entire Wario saga of games were never fun compared to the real Mario-style platformers. What an embarrassment. Terrible addition to Nintendo's mascots. Alright, so that's it for the top 10 worst original Game Boy games. And you know what? It's not even worth looking at. Who plays any of these titles? That's what I like to know, like the young kids today, okay? 20 plus years ago, we had to suffer through this kind of crap, and nobody plays them anymore. Nobody. Kids today have 3DS, even the DS, iPhones, Androids. I mean, they have all these handhelds now, PS Vita, that have far better graphics, far better music, and far better gameplay than this Game Boy crap.